All right, guys, how's everyone doing? This is Halo Pablo. Thank you for tuning in. Let's look at Bitcoin. Let's do a Bitcoin update. Today is November 6th, and we've made contact with the 400. Okay, it's a couple days ago now, and we're just going to pick up where we left off on yesterday's video. We're not going to focus so much on the CVDD as we are on the micro, because what we really want to know is whether or not this current range that we're in, now that we've touched the 400 SMA, are we going to stay above it, or are we going to go beneath it and have some price action beneath the 400, where the 400 becomes a point of resistance? Now, if that happens, then it can echo something like we had back in 2021, where now this is today over here on the right. I have these on the 4 hour. These are fractals. These are pretty similar ranges. You know how every 4 years price action has kind of like a cycle that replicates more or less, not cookie cutter, not exact, but there are fractals, there are features that coincide. It's kind of like, there's 4 seasons. Every year we have a winter around the same time. The severity of the winter and the length of the winters always changes. It's never the same, right? No 2 years are the same. But winter always comes around that same time. There is a noticeable season change on the macro. And the same with summer and spring and fall, Well, the same thing with price action. Price action is cyclical. And the waves more or less flow in identical trajectories, just not exactly the same, but in the same general direction. Now, as far as like the waves being truncated or extended, there's limitless variations to that, right? No two ranges are ever the same. But we're not looking at the minute details of it, and we're not expecting them to replicate each year. Instead, we're observing the general macro trajectories. And so we see that here with these two fractals. This one going back to 2021, 2022, and this one obviously today. We anchored the anchored VWAP, which is the ice barrier. We anchored it. We have the same kind of source. This is the source that corresponds with, you see this bottom here coming out of this drop, this ABC correction. Kind of see this here. Same thing. We came up. Price action comes up above the 200, and it creates a reaccumulation range. What we see here, the main difference being this year, today, the current for this current chart, the reaccumulation range sits securely above the anchored VWAP and the 200, whereas 4 years ago the anchored through it. This year, well, this was in June. The shakeout of this reaccumulation went and touched the anchored VWAP, or the ICE, and it stayed clear of the 200. Here it went through. You see it fell through this shakeout area down here. This double bottom came through both the 200 and the anchored VWAP. But then it came back up, shot up, and then it culminated with the buying climax, like we see, where we had the blow-off tops. Now, the buying climax in both, above both the ICE and the 200, and obviously the 400. And it was kind of similar. This one that we had this year is more protracted, more consolidative, more, I guess, linear. Whereas the one that we had 4 years ago was like a clean double top, right? We didn't even have a UTAD. I mean, an upthrust. We had a buying climax secondary test, and then that went straight to the UTAD, and then we had the macro sell-off here, right? And so this is where we are now. Came down to the LPSY, the two different LPSYs, and back underneath the anchored VWAP and the 200. And in the case of 4 years ago, it was a lot more bearish. It went straight through the 400 and touched this macro trend support line here. Whereas our current one, we stopped right at the 400, so it would have been here, and we've had a bounce. So that's what we have so far. That's what we're looking at, and if we play the bars out, you know what transpired. If we look here, now this was 4 years ago, obviously, and so you're going to notice that the price action comes back up. See if we fall under the 400. That's why we're looking at this. This is why this is kind of like ground zero, because we really need to see what happens in this area along the macro trend support line and beneath the 400 SMA. You see, it still obeys the governance. The price action still obeyed the governance of the macro trend support, but notice it was never able to come back up above the 400. So back then they were wondering, are we going to make a new all-time high? They didn't know that this was actually a redistribution. But we see that the waves, the swath of the waves, are very wide and long, and so that usually denotes distribution instead of accumulation. See how it's coming down here, making a double bottom. The bottoms were mitigated, and you notice it's going to come back up and bounce off the 400. See, it was never able to come back up and prevail through the 400. And then you notice that the 400 SMA, the 200 SMA, and the anchored VWAP are converging. You see how they're getting more and more narrow. See, this is something that kind of clues us in that we can look for. If we see these features starting to happen in our current range, then that could be the writing on the wall that we're about to embark upon a macro bear winter. Because indeed, this is what happened here. Notice that they all come together. It's like a three chord rope here, and then price action. This is the major sell-off here, and this goes down and down, all the way down. So we don't have to track it any further than that, but this was the death knell, if you will, right here, this area where it touched. So all right, now we go to the macros here. This is kind of like what we talked about yesterday. We have the price action, Bitcoin price action. This is a 2-day, and here we have the cumulative value days destroyed. We see the bearish divergence here, where the rising price action, the higher highs, but the lower lows. It's clear divergence, and then we see this here. This obviously triggered this sell-off where we had this redistribution. This was the range that we were just looking at that went down. You see how the 400 and the 200 come together right here, and then the price wasn't able to come beneath it, and then it fell down and it bottomed out here at this wide accumulation area here. We see the same thing with the cumulative value days destroyed. This line here is where the death crosses are, the death cross and the golden cross, because we had the crossover back up here, and this started the macro bull market. So if you'd bought down here anywhere underneath this line on the cumulative value days destroyed, then and just held, you would have done very, very well. But we talked about that yesterday. You check out the video if you missed it, where I go much more into detail. We have these two reaccumulation ranges since then on the macro, and then where we sit right now. And the big question is this going to be a reaccumulation, or is this actually a redistribution? We know pretty much that this is a distribution, right? This is a Wyckoff. This is a very a standard traditional Wyckoff distribution schematic number 1 with the buying climax, up thrust after distribution, this area here, the preliminary supply area, and then we came down, crossed beneath the the 200, and so this is what this is actually blown up here on the 4 hour. So whereas this is the 2-day, this is the 4 hour. So we want to really know what's going to happen here at this range, and what the price action does, judging off what it did here at this range after a bearish divergence, is crucial. And that's why I'm making such a big deal of this, because we don't want to miss what's going to happen. We want to be able to judge by the signs of what we can anticipate. It's kind of like the sailors of the past. They could judge the weather by the stars or the sunset or the sunrise with the clouds, the hue of the sky in the morning or in the evening. That's where you get the term like red in the morning, sailors take warning. Red at night, sailors delight. You know, if you have a red, like a real bloody sunset, it usually means there's going to be favorable weather in the morning. But if in the morning, if the sky is red and bloody, then that could be an omen that the weather for that day could be in danger of storms and things like that. So there could be things lurking over the horizon. So it's just kind of like and the same thing with price action. If we look at the price action in relation with the volume and the moving averages and the anchored VWAP, then maybe there could be telltale signs of what could be on the horizon, lurking above the horizon with Bitcoin. That, along with taking the news sentiment into consideration and judging of what the herd is doing. If we see if primarily people are like bullish, you see like bullish, then that's usually, the herd's usually wrong. It's usually short-term bullish, but like long-term is probably bearish, and all of them are being set up for the slaughter, and vice versa. So when everyone's afraid and everything looks like doom and gloom, it's usually a sign that the darkest hour is right before the dawn, and like the reversal is right around the corner. So these are all the things we want to look for, but we want to kind of have a heads up, and we want to be ahead of the power curve as Wyckofians, and that's why I'm looking at the price action along this macro trend support line here, because 4 years ago this was a telltale thing. So we need to see if we're going to drop beneath this area here. That's the main thing. So what I'm looking at is these series of LPSYs here, and look how we made this last. We had a bounce here right off the 400. So we touched down yesterday on the 400, right, and then we came up. We had an automatic rally, and now we're heading back down again. And so the price is going to come back down and retouch the 400. It's usually what happens. We have a mitigation. It's called a mitigation. And so this, if we could see this as a new selling climax for now. And then this is the automatic rally point here. And if it comes back down again and mitigates the 400, then we have our secondary tests. It's the second test of the floor. And then from here, depending on what happens, now if we have a pretty strong bounce from here and we are able to get back up above the AR and create maybe like a new high and come back and retake, say, the ice, flip the ice to creek, and then overcome the 200, then this would be an anomaly if we compare it to what happened 4 years ago. And so that fractal would be invalidated. The one that we were just looking at back here, this fractal here, would be invalidated. Let's see. Yeah, you saw it. This one here would be invalidated because, see, everything went underneath the 400. So this year, if we see, let's see, where's my pen? See something instead come up here and then start retaking these lines here, then this whole thing will be invalidated and we won't go off this fractal anymore. But until it becomes invalidated, we're going to go off this. And so that's why this is kind of like ground zero. That's what we're talking about in this line here. So depending on what it does, if it comes back down and mitigates on the secondary test, we could fall through. And if we fall through and then the 400 becomes a line of resistance, then we could be embarking upon something that looks like this. And instead of an accumulation, we could be looking at a redistribution. And in that case, that might be no bueno. It just really depends. The fear and greed index, we'll look at the fear and greed index, but I anticipate this transpiring within the next 2 or 3 days. We should have a pretty conclusive idea of what's going to happen, at least in the short to midterm, with price action in relation to this ground zero place. The ground zero, again, is the 400 SMA and the macro trend resistance, kind of like this area here. back in 2024. I mean, I'm sorry, 2021, 2022. This is the main thing. So I'll keep you guys posted. I'm going to try to do updates every 5 days. Some of them will be more in depth than others. It just depends on my caffeine retainment with that I can't get my thoughts together, and I have other things on my mind. So because I lead a life independent of this platform, amazingly. So yeah, I got a lot of things going on. So, but like, subscribe. If you don't have to like it, I mean, if you don't like it, don't like it. But like, subscribe if you're into Bitcoin, if you're into going into depth and more cerebral, as it were, technical analysis. If you're privy to that and you like it, it's your thing. Yeah, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. I'll keep you updated. I'll keep you as safe as I can. And so more to come. All right, guys, I'm going to get going. I got a lot of stuff to do today. I'll talk to you soon. May God bless each and every one of you. Love you guys. None of what you've seen or heard here is financial advice. This stuff's for educational use only, but of course you already knew that, right? So, all right, guys, I could say more, but I will stop here. All right, God bless. Have a great day. Adios. Bye-bye.